Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind of Sai Marie. Today's episode is a celebration of myth, resilience, and the power of speculative storytelling. I'm honored to welcome James Bowe, author of The Night Girl, a novel that invites us into a world where fantasy meets the realities of identity, belonging, and transformation. James's work doesn't just entertain, it restores. It asks us to imagine differently, to listen deeply, and to honor the unseen. James, welcome to the show. It's a joy to have you here. Can you share the origin story for your journey into authorship and what first compelled you to write?
Well, I've always been a writer at heart. I believe I grew up with parents who were librarians, and my mother was a writer. They were both readers and instilled in me. I made sure that I had a joy of reading early on. So I've always been surrounded by books, and I've always been exposed to the creation of books and to the telling of stories. So it seemed a natural thing to go into just to do for fun at high school when I started doing fan fiction. And I recommend any author, any wannabe author who wants to start out, a good place to start is to write fan fiction, because not only do you have a universe that you can play with while you practice your craft, quite often you have a fan audience out there that'll be happy to read your stuff, give you encouragement and critiques, and also help you improve your craft, encourage you to write your next story, and so on. And as I grew to an adult, I decided it was time to write my stories in my own universe, and I just made the leap and found, exploring and creating your own universes was just as fun, if not more so. And that's how I ended up writing my novels.
That's awesome. I do agree with the fan fiction aspect. So, The Night Girl blends urban fantasy and mythic undertones with social insight. How did your personal experiences shape that lens?
Well, The Night Girl is really, in some ways, a love letter to my hometown of Toronto. I do spend a lot of time exploring the city through an urban fantasy lens. And but when it came to combining the mythic undertones and the social insight, it was a matter of the way I write. I tend to throw things against the wall and see what sticks, or I tend to start out with particular ideas or scenes, and then I ask questions, and I ask what's the most interesting answer. So I had the beginnings of the young woman comes to the big city looking for work and finds it as an employment as an admin assistant for an employment agency that finds jobs for goblins and trolls. You could say that her boss is a real troll, but really he's a goblin. That's not a bad thing. But you ask questions beyond that. Why is why is there why do they need to have this employment agency? We ask questions. Why do we need this job agency? Why are goblins trying to find work without attracting notice from the human race? What are the challenges of doing that? Of like living in a world where the whole world is actually not built for you. And that answering those questions gave the book depth. And, um, the answers surprised me. And I trusted the story enough to just follow it, and see where it took me.
That's awesome. So, as a writer who explores identity and belonging, when did storytelling shift from passion to purpose for you?
Well, I think it's when I jumped out of fan fiction and into creating my own worlds and universes, and writing stories that, in theory, could be published professionally. I've always had a passion for writing, but when it became a purpose, it would be when I moved away from fan fiction and tried to write my own universes, try to create something that could be professionally published. But I feel, I guess, that I don't particularly write for a purpose. I write for a passion. I still have a day job that I need to do in order to pay the bills. So the fact that I'm still here writing these stories is largely because it's a fun thing to do. I enjoy doing it, and I think a part of me would be lost if I didn't do it. So I think for me, it's more about passion than purpose.
So, you've cultivated a readership that resonates deeply with your themes. What does that connection look like in practice? And what reader stories have moved or inspired you?
Well, they advise authors not to read reviews. I don't follow that advice because ultimately I'm writing because I want my words to be out there and to be read. And so I do appreciate it when reviews are being written, even if there are criticisms involved. Constructive criticism is as good or better than any sort of review you could receive because you can use the constructive criticism to improve your craft. I've appreciated people who were surprised by my book in some ways. They were going in expecting a light sort of romantic fantasy comedy, a fantasy rom-com about young women and goblins, and found a story that talks about racism and identity, and that they appreciated that surprise. The fact that I managed to surprise people in a good way really made me feel good.
Your work often intersects with healing and transformation. How do you see literature functioning as both therapy and empowerment?
There are many ways that literature can empower or um, there are many ways that literature can empower. Just being there, providing a role model, staking your claim about what you feel should be the way things are. It's challenging in this day and age, seeing the how the world is turning in some ways. To you get, I think, how do you respond to the rise of authoritarianism? How do you respond to online hate? It can be so wearing, but I guess I could liken the position to being sort of like a lighthouse to sort of stand strong on your ideals and shine a light out into that world saying, this is who we are, this is what we believe. And anybody who is out in that darkness could see that light knows they are not alone. And just knowing that there are others who feel the way that they do, who want things to be better, or who understand who they are, their struggles with their identity. All of that, I think, is important. It's a boon to these people, and it's just it's one of the things you just have to do.
Many emerging authors face barriers in publishing. How do you uplift their voices, and what advice would you share for them?
Well, you have to. I believe I'm taking part in the writing community on Blue Sky and on Facebook. It's been a great blessing to be a part of the Canadian author community and author communities online. And it's a place where people help each other. We sort of encourage each other. We read each other's drafts. We offer support, sympathy, constructive critiques. When a new author comes along with some great ideas, you repost what they're saying. I'm here because more established authors helped me. Marcia Skripich, a longstanding author, found me my first publisher by suggesting that I submit to the Dundon Group. And that's something that you have to pay forward. So it's all about providing the attention, providing the links, and it'll all come back. It's all about lifting all the boats.
What role does storytelling play in shaping cultural memory and collective resilience, especially through speculative fiction?
I feel that storytelling is sort of how we communicate our Okay, that's a tough question to put into words. I think speculative fiction allows us to put a mirror up to society and to explore its possibilities and to critique its flaws. And this is true of fantasy and science fiction. I mean, we have Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek showing us the possible future that we could aspire to, and Deep Space Nine within that shows perfection isn't always achievable. There are still flaws that we have to deal with. And in fantasy, we have Terry Pratchett, who started with his Discworld series to poke fun at the tropes of fantasy, but then turn that around to also poke fun of the tropes of reality through fantasy. Yeah, the storytelling has always been about holding up a mirror to ourselves and who we are, and to show us what is possible, to show us what is what is happening, and to demand better.
Sustaining a writing practice takes discipline. How do you stay inspired and grounded through challenges?
Well, one of the things I do is I tend to have two projects going on at once. So if something happens, or if I'm slightly blocked on one story, I can take a step back and work on the other project and keep momentum going while in the background, the first story, the issues that are got me blocked can be resolved. How do you stay inspired and grounded? Well, in terms of my writing practice, I tend to grab whatever time I can between all the other things that life throws at you. So I think in my case, writing practice takes flexibility. So you'll see me up late at night or getting up a bit earlier in the morning than my wife would like to wake up to find the time and take the time to sit down and get writing.
So, what have been some of the most affirming or surprising moments since publishing The Night Girl for you?
Well, I could tell you the story about how I was almost sued by a building because of the Night Girl, if you want to hear that. The Night Girl is a reprint. Initially, we were published by Roots Publications, an American boutique publisher, in 2019, and the cover there had a picture of the CN Tower, Toronto's Space Needle, prominent on the cover to highlight the fact that this story is about Toronto and it has goblins sort of running across it. And as we were releasing the book, I received a letter from the Canada Lands Corporation, which is the crown corporation that owns the CN Tower and other properties across Canada. And they said that my use of that picture, that photograph, was a violation of their trademark, and they essentially it was a cease and desist. They essentially were asking me to pulp the first print run of the book, on the day of its release. So I admit it, I freaked out a little bit, but my wife was she was saying, "You could use this, okay? I mean, a building is threatening to sue you. How bizarre is that? You have, they've handed you a promotion vehicle that others would, die for." So with her blessing, I went to the community SF Canada, which is a group of Canadian science fiction fans and authors. And again, this is the community standing up for each other and uplifting each other, and told them my story. And I'm really blessed that Cory Doctorow stepped forward and made the point, under Canadian copyright law, you are not allowed to copyright a building. Any photograph you take of any public building from a publicly accessible area is the copyright of the person taking the photograph. And they can do with it as they want, like license the image for a book cover, which is what we had done. We had licensed that image properly. So in terms of copyright, CN Tower had no case. In terms of trademark, trademark only exists to prevent brand confusion and damage to the brand. And the CN Tower does not print science fiction novels or fantasy novels with strong female protagonists. And nobody's going to look at my book and think the CN Tower is infested with goblins and trolls and not go, So he put me in touch with a pro bono lawyer, and we crafted the letter that basically said that. And we sent that off and we copied it to David Nichol at the Toronto Star, another colleague of Corey's, and, who posted on the newspaper. So we had that publicity and it kind of blew up on the internet. And I'm sure Canada Lands gave Canada Lands quite a day, which is fine because they gave me one. So in the end, they just declined to follow up on it. I mean, they disputed the fact that they said, "We don't agree with your assessment of this, but we're not going to take this any further." And that was that. Um, I was thinking, I mean, why would they go after me? Especially since like other books out there have the CN Tower pretty prominently. Just that those books tended to be published by larger publishers with larger, I think, legal departments. So I suspect they went after me because I was a small fry, and if they could roll me over, they could use that to go after bigger fish. And so I'm quite pleased that I didn't roll over. And so that was, I would say, affirming and surprising.
How do you hope your writing shifts the way society views creativity, myth, and legacy?
Well, I would be surprised if something I were able to shift society that much. I would hope that people learn to better appreciate creativity, that people explore the myths that make them who they are, and remember sort of where they came from. If the Night Girl can do that, then I would say that would be more than I could ever have hoped for.
Readers navigating isolation, illness, or creative doubt, what message of hope do you want to share with them?
Well, I would say that they are, even though they feel isolated and mired in doubt, they're far from the only ones. I mean, they are not alone. This is I mean, I've explored a world asking the question of what it's like to live in a world that's not made for you. And I have considerably more privilege, but I at least have, I hope, understanding. And hopefully that might be enough to show that there are people out there that do understand and are doing what we can to build those connections to try and, push back against hatred and to have everybody explore their creativity and not be afraid of, not be af
What projects or manuscripts are you most excited about right now?
well, I'm working on, I guess, somewhat a, science fiction equivalent to The Night Girl. I mean, there are no goblins or trolls in it, but it's another story about a young woman and the strange things she encounters while she is working. This one is entitled "The Curator of Forgotten Things," and it's set in the near future when artificial intelligence and automation have basically taken over all the jobs. But fortunately, we've handled this correctly with a national minimum income. Everybody is being paid enough to put food on the table and to have a roof over their heads. So everybody is comfortable. We're exploring this world. A dementia starts to sweep through the human race. And the only people who are unaffected by it are either are both A, left-handed, and B, are either still employed or are engaged in pursuits that are like being employed. They are basically saved by their passions. And I think the background of the story is that it's about identity. Because when you ask somebody, "Who are you?" chances are they'll respond by telling you their name, where they come from, and what work they do. And so what happens to your identity if all of a sudden that what work you do goes away? And so that's one thing I'm exploring right now with Curator of Forgotten Things. I'm enjoying it, and we'll see where it goes.
Finally, what do you envision for the future of your writing and the communities it touches?
Well, I think hopefully we'll carry on as long as we can. I mean, science fiction and fantasy have been around for centuries, and I expect it'll still be out there. I mean, traditional publishing has had a lot of challenges, and traditional authors sometimes finding it hard to get traction with their novels. But I intend to keep on writing, even if I post all my stuff on my website. And the communities I know will still be out there and will still share our connections and our stories. And I look forward to seeing what those communities, what stories come out of that.
James, thank you for sharing your journey, your insight, and your imagination with us today. The Night Girl reminds us that storytelling is a form of reclamation, a way to honor the unseen, to restore belonging, and to reimagine legacy. To our listeners, may you carry forward the inspiration James has offered and remember that creativity is a form of empowerment. Until next time, this has been the Mind of Sai Marie.